Welcome to the Childcare Genius Podcast. Proud to be the world's #1 community for brilliant childcare leaders. Each episode will feature interviews with the brightest minds in the childcare industry to guide you into becoming a smarter business leader. Our hosts have opened 10 schools while raising 5 children. They are certified business coaches and are the top-selling childcare business book authors of all time. This episode is sponsored by Arleaf Childcare Insurance. Give Blake a call at 972-232-2258 to get a free quote on childcare business insurance today. Let's welcome to the Childcare Genius Podcast our hosts, Brian and Carol Dupre.
Episode 28 of the Childcare Genius Podcast.
We're your hosts, Brian and Carol Dupre.
So releasing this episode on Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Brian gets me flowers just about every week. So we don't usually do anything special for Valentine's Day because, like Brian says, Valentine's Day is every day if you're married to someone who loves you.
Yeah, that sounds corny, but it's true. And we don't really do anything special on Valentine's Day because there's always flowers in our house. When they start to die, I get her flowers again. And because she deserves them. Not to say that I did that early in a marriage, but I do it now. And so now you can see why I love this person more than the day I met her. It just gets better and better every day.
Let's talk about leverage in your childcare business.
So leverage is something that most people don't know what it is and how to achieve it. It's the ability to work less and get paid more for that same work. So if you're listening to that podcast, does that interest you getting to get leverage in your childcare business?
How would you like to work 1 hour in your business and get paid for hundreds of hours for the same work?
So leverage is working smarter, not harder. And this is a subject of a webinar we got scheduled for on February 23rd at 1 o'clock. So visit childcaregenius.com to register today. Space is limited to 100, so do so today.
If you can't make it, register anyway, because we'll send you the recording afterwards.
The website, again, is childcaregenius.com. So I can promise you that Masterclass will change your life. So register now before it fills up. And again, leverage is all about doing things better. We're going to cover 5 different, what we call pulleys, or 5 different pillars of success when it comes to getting leverage in your childcare business. So if you want a better business and you want to do things smarter, you want to make more and work less, register our masterclass. Again, childcaregenius.com and register. So our guest today on the podcast. Hey, Vernon, welcome to the Childcare Genius Podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. How are you and Carol doing?
We're doing great.
Really good. Recording this in February. It's nice and warm up here.
40 degrees.
40 degrees. I mean,
Wow.
that is warm.
40 degrees. Well,
Where are you at? Where are you at today?
I'll get out my phone and run around the block later, give the neighbors something to talk about. I'm at home in North Carolina, and no, I won't be wearing a thong. That's a joke. But anyway, and it's in the 60s today. So, hey, I'm good with that. Absolutely.
60s is beautiful.
Yeah.
40s is shorts weather for me in Maine. So that's nice and warm. 60s is probably shorts weather for you in North Carolina.
It is. And the sun is out. It's bright. It's beautiful. Beautiful day.
It was funny, we were in Jamaica last month, most of January, and it got down to 60 one day, and we were freezing. I mean, literally freezing. I had a breeze, and we needed a jacket. I was like, oh my God, we are spoiled. It gets 85 in the day, when it gets down to 60, we're freezing at night, while the people at home are shoveling snow, so we should not be complaining, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything is relative. Well, it's been a while since we've had you on the podcast. We wanted to get you back. We know you're a superstar and we love talking to you. And we know you bring a lot of value to our listeners. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on in your life. So for people that don't know you, and the other day I came across somebody who actually didn't know you. I could not believe it. There's only one out there, and I found that person. But maybe there is another one. She's like, do you know anything about this Vernon this guy? And I said, yeah, I know him very well. He's a good friend. And a goes, no, I never heard of them before. So there might be one more person out there
There
who
might
doesn't
be.
know much about
Yeah.
you. So I'd love to hear you. I'd love to tell the story about how you got into the childcare business, because we all have crazy stories about that.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then what you're doing now, because I'm sure people want
Yeah.
to know kind of what
Yeah.
you're up to.
Yeah. Well, I'm like you guys. I grew up in this industry. It kind of came about organically, and I have hands-on practical experience in this industry. I was referred to a few years ago as the trifecta of childcare, which I think is interesting because my mom kept children in our home growing up. And so I was one of the kids that she took care of every day. And then when I graduated from college, we opened our first center, that held 30 children. My mom worked in the baby room. I cooked. Worked in the pre-K room in the afternoon. Still to this day, that was my favorite job of all times, working with those little pre-K kids in the afternoon. And then we had a little lead paint issue at that location. And so we were asked to relocate in 30 days. And if you've ever been asked to relocate a center in 30 days with licensing and inspections and all that, you've never been tasked with anything challenging if you haven't done that. So we moved to a bigger, better location. And then a few years went by and it was destroyed in a hurricane. I live in North Carolina. We're kind of a bullseye for hurricanes. And so then I was tasked with, so I was able to accomplish moving in 30 days. So then I was able to, then I was tasked with, how about now can you relocate like in a day? So it's like, okay, yeah, you did the last time. Let's see how you do this time. I'm like, okay, God, I got it. I like a challenge, but this is crazy. So we relocated, and then we're in temporary location for about a year. And the biggest compliment I've ever been paid was that our parents drove out of their way for a year to where we were located in a. And I'll just be rough. This is not it's just the reality. We moved to a much urban, rougher, is that appropriate, part of town than the clientele that I had. So it was quite challenging for them. And we were there for about a year, and then I purchased property and convinced the bank that I could pay a loan back that I was convinced the day I was driving to closing, when we finished the building of the building. I was on the way to closing, sitting at that stoplight going, how will I ever make that payment? It was 3 times the rent that we were paying before it was destroyed in a flood, the hurricane. But we managed to do it. It's amazing that, perseverance and hard work, doesn't always pay off, but sometimes I've been lucky that, and blessed that it has paid off. And then we did that for a while. I was ready for a change, and so I started buying competitors and some people in some neighboring towns, and I ended my career owning childcare centers in 2019. In June, we sold to a regional provider. Had 5 locations, 750 kids. 150 staff. Biggest decision of my life was deciding whether to sell or not. I cried about it, I prayed about it, and ultimately I decided it was the right thing. And then COVID came along, and I realized, oh yeah, that was so the right thing. And then Jane and Jerry, Jane Porterfield, Jerry Pastor, friends of mine. We were in group coaching together. We had built a bond. I was coming up doing their professional development trainings. They had grown to 20 locations. When I met them, they had 8. They'd grown to 20. Like 900 staff. It was just unbelievable. And they managed. It was totally coincidental. They sold about 2 months after I did. And they called me during COVID and said, Vernon, you're young. I know that's relative, Brian. But anyway, you're young. We're young. We're not ready to retire. Let's go back in it. We think we still have something, we could do. And so I told them they were crazy the first couple of times and hung up on them. And then the third time they convinced me. And so I joined them. And so we are running the Nest schools. We took ownership of our first center in January of 2021. And today we are operating 37 or 38 schools. And we have 4 or 5 under contract that will be coming on board in the next few months. And so we are, for the childcare industry, we are on a rapid growth and growing. And so everything that all the owners and directors are dealing with out there, we're dealing with it in multiples, right? I mean, we're really, you multiply, an issue of 1 school or 5 schools to 35 or 38 schools, coming on board. It's quite challenging. So, and over the years, I started speaking. I wrote a couple books. So I decided years ago that I didn't want to just survive this career. This isn't a hobby for me. And I think there are too many people in our industry that, they drive a car that their company or their center pays for, and their family eats the groceries that the center pays for. And, they don't have, car insurance and different stuff, whatever. And they think that that's success. And I'm not judging anybody, because success means different things to different people. But my challenge there is the owner operators out there who aren't making a profit. And I know we're not supposed to talk about profit in this industry. It's a bad word, right? If you make the news, if somebody does something, can you afford to survive it? Do you have the reserves? Can you make payroll? Can you make your payment for 2 or 3 months or whatever out there? Do you have deep enough pockets? Can you call the best childcare attorney there is out there, all right, to support you, to represent you, right, and to support your staff, et cetera? And I think there's still too many people in this industry that don't take it as seriously and feel as if they're doing God's work. Right. They feel as if, and I'm like, that's wonderful to do God's work, but leave the vow of poverty to the nuns. This is not what this industry is about. It's too hard. It's too litigious, not to make a profit, not to have money in the bank, because, one of the things, we can all deny this, but one of the things you have to run a great company is you have to have money in the bank.
Man,
Absolutely.
we've been talking about it for a while.
I got off on a tangent there. Sorry about that. I get passionate. That my mom,
Vernon, you're speaking,
home. Yeah, my mom was
speaking
a home provider, and she came when we opened our first center. She truly led with her heart, and it only took a couple months before we realized, you've got to go in the classroom. I need to run the company, because they would come and say, Miss Nancy, I spent too money at the grocery store this week. Can I pay? And she said, oh, honey, just pay me when you got it. Right. And so I would go to her and say, now I'm going to start paying you when we got it. So you stay out of the tuition collection. And she got it and never got involved after that. She's like, oh, I understand. So, yeah.
Yeah, crazy. But you're right. After I wrote my first book and was all about making profit in the business, I think people started to take notice, and the people that weren't making profit and the people that were making profit was like, okay, I don't have to be embarrassed about this anymore. This is a business. It is not a hobby. And guilt. People have that profit guilt. That they make money off children. I mean, come on.
Like a pediatrician?
Yeah. I mean, there's hundreds of businesses that make money off children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're not making money off children. We're making money by making a difference in the lives of children and helping our staff member out.
Yes, providing the best quality care we absolutely can.
Amen. Right. The better we do, the less kids are going to be killing each other when they become teenagers. We are the first line of defense in saving this country from itself.
I absolutely believe that, Brian. I do a keynote, and it's for teachers when I do professional development days for teaching staff, and it's called Controlled Chaos. And we talk about the classroom and how to control a group of kids. It's a little bit like controlling cats, right? Trying to herd cats. But we talk about the skills that we're teaching in preschool. They're life skills. I mean, they legitimately are life skills. And, if we can teach them right, if we can give them that foundation to know how to do conflict resolution and, et cetera, those are the kind of things that our society, starting something and finishing something. Lord, if we could teach our society anything, that would be, a great thing at this day and age with the work ethic or lack of work ethic we have right now.
Absolutely. So in your book, Don't Go, a practical guide for tackling employee turnover, you give some tips to reduce employee turnover. Can you share with us some of the top things you recommend to reduce staff turnover and improve workplace culture?
Yeah, thanks, Carol. Good question. One of the main things is I believe that we are a relationship business, right? We many of us want to attack the childcare business as we're transactional. We provide a service, you pay us some money. Provide a service, you pay us money. And really, we're building relationships that they pay for, right? You know what I mean? That doesn't sound right, but you know what I'm saying. And so one of the things, and we have multiple customers. It's the parents, it's the kids, it's the staff, right? That's where we're living and breathing these days. And so I believe that the director's role is changing, has changed, will continue to change. And I think that the director's role, they need to become a real leader. They need to become more of a house mom, right? They need to be around, walking around, building relationships, walking around, encouraging people. Directors are going to have to step away from the desk, step out of the office. We're going to have to stop expecting people who are in multi-site companies are going to have to stop expecting the directors to do so much tedious work sitting at the desk. And we're going to have to support them with people around them who can do that work, because the work still has to be done. But we're going to have to free up our directors so that they legitimately can get into those classrooms and walk around and interact with people and develop the relationships that people desperately need. Because if you don't build a relationship with the leadership of your school, people, your employees are building relationships with each other. It's not necessarily bad, but there are some bad apples out there. Most places that you work, not just childcare, most places that you work, there's some bad seeds out there. I like to call them the negative Nellies, and many times that's where people will be attracted to, and they're going to find a leader. If it's not your leadership team, they will lean towards a leader you have on staff. And so that's one of the first things. Another thing I would say is, we have to realize that things aren't going to get back normal. I'm still interacting with people who think, oh, I just want people to get back to normal. I just want people to start coming to work. I just want an educated, experienced workforce to begin to apply, right? And that's, I believe we are in our new normal. And I think that we, instead of pushing back on the youngest generation, when I grew up, when I was potty trained, it was quite dramatically different than the youngest generation that we're hiring now. When they were potty trained, when they went into potty, the whole family went around and then they clapped. Said, "Oh, they did potty." It was yeah, and we wonder why they want a sticker for coming to work. Well, because the family applauded when they peed into potty, right? I was little. Grandma got a switch and said, "Go in the pot." I mean, that was the dramatic difference, right? But so I see people who are kind of angry, right? That why should I have to support them? Why should I have to praise them? Why should I have to reward them for doing their job? Because it is ingrained in them, just like it is ingrained with us. Now, the youngest generation, realizing that, no, they're not the greatest generation. My parents were, considered the greatest generation, right? But this youngest generation, I will say I believe they will go in history as one of the most powerful generations. They almost have brought our country to our knees because, they're sitting on their mother or father's basement couch, playing games, right? Ordering Uber Eats and saying, I'm not getting out of bed for $12 an hour. Yep. I'm not doing that, right? So many parts of our country haven't had a minimum wage increases, but I haven't spoken to one director in the last year who doesn't say we're absolutely paying over minimum wage. We're absolutely having to. So they are forcing us to pay. They're also telling us we're going to be flexible. You're going to have to be flexible. If not, I'm going to ghost you. I'm not coming to work, because when my dog gets invited to a birthday party, he's going to go. And I'm going to take him, right? So we can either, figure out how to let them off for their dog to go to that birthday party, or you just, people leave over a series of events. And some people leave over one event, but right. So that dog, expecting them, not to go to a dog's birthday party is kind of more than they can stand it sometimes. Another thing that I would recommend is we have to overhire, and we've got to pay more money. You absolutely, you're going to have to pay more money. You can stick to your guns if you want to. People just aren't going to come for the kind of money people want to pay. And we're also finding in the real world, to get one really good hire, we have to have 12 people that we're interacting with, that we're interviewing, that we're talking to, that we're bringing in, blah, 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 to get one good hire. So there are people out there who, need 2 or 3 people, right? And they're talking to 3 or 4 people. You will never, ever, ever get caught up that way. So, but we also got to get the revenue up. How do you get the revenue up? You've got to make sure you get as many kids in there as you can, right? With your expectations. We've got to make sure we're charging the most tuition that we possibly can. And still, I will get people say, should I go up on tuition? Absolutely. But sometimes people are going up, twice a year, right? When I mentioned flexibility, the young generation, they demand flexibility. That is normally where, when I talk to owners and directors, they kind of get this glazed look of like, oh, we can't do that. We're childcare providers. We can't, have a flexible schedule. But I challenge people to think outside the box. And I also ask your staff for ideas, because participatory management is something that I strongly believe is a strong basis how I managed my company. And that is, before I would make policy changes or adjust things or develop a new curriculum or whatever it is, I would go to the people who would most likely affect or would affect the most, and I would ask them for input. And in doing that, especially when you're multi-site, I love doing that, because then I would do like an owner's roundtable, right? You could do a teacher's group or whatever. You could do it Zoom. People are so used to Zooming now, but interacting with people at each location, just so that you can get their input on what's going on. So how do you deal with flexibility? I would say offering 10 or 12 hour days is one of the ways that I would recommend doing that. And so that seems overwhelming to people when they think about that. But how I tell people to start it is you don't have to do it's not all or nothing. You don't have to do it at your whole school. You don't have to put everybody on that schedule. You could put your preschool classroom on that schedule. You could put your toddlers on that, whatever. If you have a group of teachers who are willing to try that or work that, then let's go that way. I love having a substitute pool out there. And one of the ways, and get some judgment behind this, but in the restaurant industry, one of the ways they are recruiting people is they pay through an app. And you work today, you get paid today, right? And not all of us need that, right? We got to settle down the judgment, but some of us, we need that, right? We need to be able to recruit as many people as we can, good people, right? And there are some good people that, if they substitute today, they don't really want to wait 2 weeks, right, to get paid for that. They want that immediate, gratification. And so that, just something to consider. One of the biggest opportunities during that came about through COVID is reducing your operating hours. Now this doesn't work if you're like next door to a big manufacturing plant that everybody goes to work at 6 a.m., then you're probably going to need to open up before that, right? But if you're just the typical childcare program, and you look at you're open from 6 to 6 or 6:30 to 6, whatever, if you look at your first 30 minutes, you realize many times, oh, there's only 2 kids in the building during that time, or there's 3 kids in the building during that time. And people say, I can't reduce it. What will they do? I don't know, but you're talking about keeping your center open 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year because of 2 or 3 kids, right? And most people who have reduced their operating hours, those families, 90% of those families have made it work. They figured out how to make it work. So if you can reduce 30 minutes off the afternoon, 15 minutes, 30 minutes off in the evening, those shortening that day helps tremendously. Another thing that I recommend is sticking to some contract hours with your family. So when they enroll, or each year, that they actually commit. Okay, well, I need you from 7:30 until 5:15 or whatever. That you make them stick to that. And your teachers are the best people to make sure parents, if they have a list of, okay, Bobby's supposed to be here from this time to this time, they are going to ring a bell and say, hello, Bobby's still here. He needs to go home, So, that's a great way of doing that. And it's not something you want to throw at families. But it's something that you could roll out there your next school year, the next time you do a rate increase, because it's a great way of saying, hey, we're doing this increase, but being able to know how we're going to schedule by making families stick to contract hours, it enables us not to do the rate increase that we really need to do. So that's and then you just charge them more. I used to blame everything on our program on kangaroo time. I would say, oh, it automatically puts in the late fees. It's a lie, but I would just tell them that, right. And the same thing. So families go outside their contract hours, they just immediately get a $25 or $35, fee stuck on there every week. So talk about, being able to tack that on, and they'll either figure it out or they'll start paying it. And last thing I'll say about how to have a more flexible schedule and have a more user-friendly schedule with your teaching staff is to take more time off. I've known many schedules, many schools, centers now that are taking a week off at Christmas, taking a week off the July 4th week, right? Closing a few days, before the school year starts, etc. And doing those kinds and taking as many holidays as you absolutely can. I think that when we were all fighting over enrollment, we all had staff, but we didn't have the kids that we wanted. We were doing anything and everything we can, and we were going to be the center. We're going to be open more than anybody else, right? We're going to beat everybody else. We're going to be open longer. We're going to be open more, and you can depend on us and all this. And I think now we're more at a struggle with staffing, and so I think we need to lean more how to make it more of a so they can have more of a work-life balance, and that is opening, taking as many holidays as you absolutely can. So I like the idea of, opening, what can we live with when it comes to hiring, trying to hire, having more people available to us. I used to be the center that said, no purple hair, no tattoos, no piercings, and I had to adapt to that. I had to get out of my old man way and really open up to that. And so I really started looking at what can we live with rather than what do we need to become known for, what we don't allow. Benefits for part-time people. I think that is something that we could put out there, and benefits in general. Can we talk about benefits being the preferred employer for the youngest generation? What are they interested in? They're not interested in a retirement plan that takes 4 or 5 years to be vested in, right? They're not going to be there. I mean, they're not going to be there. The majority of them aren't going to be there that long. So I like to look at things to really start actively recruiting some part-time people and offer them some benefits. And most benefits that you offer, you can add part-time people to it. Of course, you need to talk to your provider to make sure. I'm not talking about health insurance, but like your dental, what else? Life, vision, things like that. Many times they are completely great with you adding people to it. And also, this sounds so basic, but holiday and vacation time for your part-time people, right? You just go into your payroll system, you divide the last 52 weeks, it will tell you how many hours they've averaged in a week. And when there's a holiday pay, they get that many hours, right? For a day, how many they've divided in for a day. Same thing for a vacation week. I rarely get thanked for vacation pay. I don't remember, ever really getting thanked for vacation pay. It's just kind of become expected, right? Until I started giving vacation pay to my part-time people. That's when people started thanking me. I almost all of them would come to me, oh my, that's cool, Mr. Vernon. Thank you for paying me for that. That was great. And my family went to wherever and I got the vacation pay. So, that's something that it does, and it really doesn't cost you that much in my opinion. So I think that is one way, like I said, to become preferred in provider for employer for the youngest generation.
Well, you really hit everything there.
I get to rolling, and it's like,
no, I hope the listeners are taking notes, because you hit 30, 40 different things, which is exactly right. And it's funny how closely we ran our businesses, Vernon. Yeah. I mean, everything you mentioned, like we do that.
Yeah.
We've always done that. We've done it. but we've evolved too, and we've
Yeah,
changed. And,
yeah.
our
That's a
teachers
great.
can't have purple hair now, and they can't
Yeah.
show a tattoo. And we've always been sticked on that stuff. So we've changed, we've evolved, and yeah, we even closed for a week at Christmas time. We've never done that before.
Yeah.
But our teachers need a break. They work so darn hard. They need that 9 days.
Brian, the other thing is the people we're employing now have a different tolerance level than the teachers 20 years ago, and the children are different. I mean, we're just going to be, Lord, get on social media, don't go on TikTok. Good Lord, you see how teachers and kids react with each other. It's frightening. But the children's behavior is dramatically different today than it was 25 years ago, and so I think teachers need that mental.
But our parent behavior is different too, because our parents are the same age as our staff members.
Yeah.
So when we close for a week, they can understand why we're doing that differently than the previous generation. So I think if we come at it with that, and when we raise our rates and we say we're doing this so we could pay our teachers more,
right?
They might not like it, but they understand it because that's how they think. They've been that value. So things are a lot different, and the way we frame things have to be different as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep.
So I love that. So you wrote this first book, which was a great book. I mean, we got it on my bookshelf here, and it's become our little staffing resource for us. And then you come along, it's like, okay, one wasn't enough to have an amazing book out there. And you were thinking one day, so let me write a second book. So you wrote this book called Get Out. I mean, get out. But before you go, practical steps to turn your zero into a hero or set them free. I absolutely love this book. You discuss steps to help poorly performing teachers step up to the plate and contribute, or get out.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to get maybe 2 or 3 strategies from the book that would help out.
Well, where we are in the world today is we really have to focus on our training, right? I mean, that's the goal we've got, because we're hiring. I don't know about you, but when people apply now, they're less educated and the less experienced typically than we used to hire, right? And so we're starting at a lower level. And I don't mean that derogatorily, because I have been, even before COVID, I have been the kind of person that I had rather hire somebody with long work history at CarQuest, right? At the shop place. Then I had hired a childcare teacher that's worked at 5 different locations in the last 3 years, right? I feel like we spend so much time untraining people. Our directors are feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling as if, let me hire this person. They've got 3 years experience. They can come in, they can fix what's wrong, instead of turning internally and saying, how can we fix? How can we train the people we have? How can we make these people better? Because when you have the people, what is it they say? The devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, right? At least you know the people you've got, right? At least you know their strengths, their weaknesses, and things like that. And so hopefully we can train. But the other thing I would say is I interacted with a company recently that did kind of an undercover boss scenario where they sent an undercover person in, posed as a new teacher. And the things that person was told, it ran the gambit. The number of classrooms that never even spoke to the new person. We're wondering why we're being ghosted, why people leave at lunch or leave the first week and they don't come back. Some of that, I believe, we can drill back to some of our staff that we currently have. I heard one say recently in a joking manner, I'll learn her name when she gets through the probationary period, right? And now that's a little frightening. So before we toss somebody into a classroom to be trained, we need to have a verbal conversation with the person who's going to train. Are you up to training? Right? We need to assure, do they have the tools? Do they have the time? Do they have the ability to do the training? And do they want to do the training? Because you don't want to put your new person in there if they don't want to do the training. And you'd much rather them be honest with you than lie to you and not do a very good job. Because I had rather my amazing preschool teacher train my new toddler teacher than a toddler teacher who's mediocre or has 1 foot out the door, right? Absolutely. So we need to also make sure that the person doing the training has some incentive. These people are saying now, it's not my job. I'm not getting paid to do, I'm getting paid to do my job. And my job is not to continue to train this revolving door of people coming in and out, in and out, in and out. People can have different opinions about whether it's their job or not, but they don't see it as their job. And that's the perspective. And that's what we really have to depend on. So we need to look at, what kind of incentive do we have? Do we have a short-term, a long-term incentive for them to really make this person successful? And also we need to have a two-way street of feedback from the person doing the training with us, feedback from the person getting trained with us about how the training is going and how they're really doing, and do they feel as if that they are getting what they need, and are they being taken care of, right? How are things? Are things going well? Are you learning what you need to know? Is there anything that you're challenging with? Is there anything that we could do to make it easier for you? Another point that I like to do in this in my book, in the Get Out, is for us to acknowledge some of the best teachers are artists. Teaching can be an art due to quality rated standards and et cetera, and us, especially those of us who are multi-site, wanting conformity, right? We've taken away some of their ability to be who they are, right? And so I think that we have to stop pushing the conformity and look at the big picture and say, are the children safe? Are the children happy? Are they providing great experiences for the children, right? And if they are, so much of this, we can let it go, right? We can, if they're not great reading the stories, if they're not great doing story time, that will come in time. But when you hold new people to say, okay, your story time is from this time to this time, hold their attention, right? And they can't hold their attention, that's where the frustration level rises, and that's where they again wind up ghosting or whatever. So you may have a teacher who is who loves art, loves free play, whatever. So what if they do spend a bulk of their day doing that, right? What if a teacher is great outside, loves to go outside, and what if they spend longer outside than the other teachers? And I know there's minimum standards, etc. But whatever. So I really think that we do need to look at people as human and not as robots, and have that flexibility so that they can do what they do well. So when they leave, that they feel as if they have made accomplished, rather than, oh gosh, I didn't do that right again. And also some of our experienced staff who are conformists, who will do exactly what we need them to do, they kind of look at the new teachers and that are deviating from the schedules and not doing right. And it causes a little bit of judgment there, and it causes them to look at and point out the flaws of the new teacher, rather than to let's embrace their strengths, So we want to build the kind of environment where at the end of the day, when your experienced teachers comes to you and goes, oh my goodness, Mr. Fred is amazing at this, right? Instead of stop by your office and say, oh, he couldn't do it today. He wasn't really good. He ended early or whatever. Those scenarios, we really want to focus on that. And the last thing I'll say is, holding your team members accountable. If you want to protect your good staff, if we don't want to burn out our staff who've been here for a long period of time, we have to hold people accountable. Leaders hold people accountable. Leader, that doesn't mean running around being a raging witch. It just means holding people accountable, talking to people in private, praising them in public, right? And sharing the why. When we want things done differently, we want to correct. This is the more important than ever, right? Is to share why. Why is it important that you clean the lobby every day, right? Why is it important that the plants in the lobby get watered, right? So they look like they're alive. Why? How does that relate to raises, right? It relates to raises because when people come in for tours and your plants are dead and your lobby's nasty, they're like, how are they going to take care of kids if they can't even take care of their lobby, right? And not being able to fill the center up, and people coming in and we're spending money on marketing and blah, 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 blah. But we've got 25% openings, right? It affects how much we can pay people. So, giving the people a why is really important. Let's see. I've got one other one that is it's not really in the Get Out, but it's one of those hiring techniques, because we all want more people applying, and I just have a simple way of getting more organic applicants. And that is the simple technique. And I learned this from Michelle Langsmith. And that is hiring in public, right? Doing your interviews in a public place, right? She set up during COVID, she put up a table out front of her center and sat out there and did her interviews. And she got multiple phone calls, right? Because of people going, are you interviewing? Are you hiring? What's going on? Why is the table out? Whatever. So that was interesting. So, but now I have people encouraging people to go do your interview in public places. A Chick-fil-A is an amazing place to do an interview, right? Instead of in your office, take them to meet them at the Chick-fil-A. People see, people have done this and they get people stop by when you're done and go, are you interviewing? My granddaughter's looking for a job. How old do you have to be to work there? Et cetera. The library, a mall, on campus. If you have a good college in your community, hiring and setting up in their cafeteria, right, and doing interviews that they do get together. Can I host your party? Can I sponsor your party? Can I buy the pizza for your party? Right? Are you having a graduation party with your graduating class this year? I'm happy to reserve the room at a local restaurant and buy them all dinner, whatever, those kinds of things. So really getting outside of our box and thinking about how can we become visible out there. And the other thing I'll talk about, referrals. Referrals are important. And I was doing a South Carolina Child Care Association conference last weekend, and we were talking about referrals. And I said, how much do you think you should offer your teachers for a referral? And they were like, $25. And I was like, oh my, no. Oh no, it's got to be, and if that works for you, that's wonderful. Go for it. If you don't have a problem, and if $25 is getting people to take action, that's wonderful. In my world, $25 won't hardly do anything for people, So, we've got people out there doing $300, $500, $1,500 and people say, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And I'm like, but think about it. How much are you going to spend on Indeed? How much are you going to spend? How much energy are you blowing through? How much revenue are you missing because you can't enroll? How much is a qualified teacher worth to you, right? And hopefully if they're coming from somebody in-house, they know what you expect. And hopefully they're only going to refer people who would fit in, right? And would be good candidates and great employees. And so I'd say, bump up that dollar amount a little bit to really make a difference. And also don't make them wait 6 months to get it. Once you get them in, once you get them hired, give them part of it. And then 90 days later, 60 days later, give them the rest of it. Right.
Love that. Vernon, you have been amazing here. I mean, I love that. You hit it right on the head. The only thing I could add is something we've been teaching a little bit now in our Child Care Genius University is we notice a lot of people have social anxiety coming out of COVID. Our teachers have it, our parents have it. You'll see it a lot. And one thing we've been teaching that's working well, we started doing this, is to Zoom interview somebody before you live interview. And what we do that for is to give them a chance to eyeball us. And they're used to showing up for Zoom because that's all they did during COVID. So by having that, it gives a chance to meet the director and establish a little bit of rapport. And it's hard to come to a strange center to meet a strange person when you have anxiety. But if you're not coming to a stranger, you're coming to somebody you met on Zoom that you had a personal kind of relationship with. And that way, when you're Zoom interviewing the person, you can eyeball them. So you'll know if they're a good fit in the first 5 minutes of the Zoom interview. And you can end that thing pretty darn quick on the Zoom. It's a lot harder to end a live interview, especially if you're at Chick-fil-A and you got a burger or a chicken in front of you. Hard to say, okay, I got to go and take half my sandwich and leave. That doesn't work. So
just buy them a cookie, not a sandwich.
Yeah, just buy a cookie. I like that. But we found out that we get a much higher show up rate if you Zoom them first. And you have a much lower no-show rate on the live if you Zoom them first. So that's one other thing I could add. And that's something that's new that we've changed recently. And we're teaching it now. But you hit it right on the head. And I thank you so much. And we'll go ahead and wrap up with your mindset question.
So our mindset question for you today is, what is your favorite relaxing activity?
My favorite, how I deal with stress is sleep. I'm one of those people that I need my 8 hours a day, right? And I'm one of those people, when I've had a rough day, at the end of the day, I may take a little nap, right? I have been known to even take a nap in the parking lot of my centers at lunchtime, right? To go get something to eat, sit in the parking lot, and I'll call them and say, hey, or text one of them inside, say, hey, I'm going to take a little nap. If I'm not in 15 minutes, come get me. I'll be in. So yeah, that's how I deal with mine, is really just to rest. That is what enables me to reset. That works for me. Other people, do so many different things, and I think we have to figure out whatever works for us, and not if it works for me, works for you. That's wonderful.
That's amazing, because some people, when they're stressed out, they can't sleep, and that's one of the problems that creates it. So it's good that you're able to clear your mind, and that becomes relaxing. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Vernon, for listeners, you can get both of his books on Amazon. And I highly recommend reading both of them, and anything with staff related, workplace culture. You are the master. And we want to thank you so much for coming on the Child Care Genius podcast today. We love you. We appreciate you. And we hope things are well for you. And we wish you nothing but the best. Give our best to Jerry and Jane, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
He is one of the most interesting people I've ever met, and full of energy.
He is, boy. He could talk, but the good thing is, what comes out of his mouth is knowledge. He spews it over and over. And I hope you were listening and paying attention and taking notes. And if not, go back and play that recording again, because he probably gave 100 different tips, tools, and techniques to use to improve your workplace culture, improve your hiring, improve your processes, and make more of that dirty word profit, which he's so good at. So we love Vernon. So thanks, Vernon, for coming on to our podcast. So if you need help in your childcare business, and you'd like a free coaching call with me to help you in any area of your business that you're struggling in, just visit our website at childcaregenius.com, and under the coaching tab, select the free coaching call button. You're guaranteed to come away with 2 to 3 items you can take action on right away to help you where you're struggling. So we're going to leave you with a couple thoughts. How is your center's workplace culture?
Are you having a big problem with teacher turnover and can't seem to get fully staffed?
Just email us at info@childcaregenius.com with your issue. We can help you.
We specialize in helping owners get fully staffed. Don't forget to register for our Leverage Masterclass on February 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time by visiting childcaregenius.com.
So this concludes episode 28 of the Child Care Genius podcast. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us, and we really appreciate you listening.
Just a reminder to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss a future episode of the Child Care Genius podcast. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Child Care Genius podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please do us a favor and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a future episode. Don't forget to visit our website at childcaregenius.com to see a list of services we offer to help grow your childcare business. Until next time, thank you for being a part of the Childcare Genius community.